Good morning. The energy is really low. Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, ahla wa sahla. And that is the extent of my kids' Arabic. That's as much as they know. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to ADC's ArabCon 2025. My name is Sam Ali. I am the founder and CEO of Mic Drop Media, and it's really amazing to be here. I made sure to have the standard Dearborn breakfast, which is a can of Celsius and a vape. And I feel I'm locked in. I'm locked in right now. A little bit about myself. Everyone always asks me, Sam, what is it short for? And, I'll tell you guys, what I tell the police, wallah, this is my dad's car. I swear. I'm born and raised in Dearborn, graduated from Fortson High School, class of 2006. Woo-woo. Tractors. Graduated from the University of BP. I also did some 2 years at Sunoco State University. Spent a lot of time there, getting some real life action. I spent 13 years as a TV sports reporter. All over the country, up in the UP and Minnesota. It was a really eye-opening experience, but it was really hard to kind of explain to people what I did because I did work for the Fox affiliate there, but people thought I was working for Fox News, and it was hard to explain that to people. Like, even my parents were like, واحد يمني شغال في Fox News. I'm like, no, that's not what I do. But sometimes it benefits, because one time I got picked up. I was on my way to work, and a cab driver, an Uber, picked me up, and he's sitting there. He's like, where you work? I work at the Fox News station. Oh, I love Fox News, love it. Oh yeah, you probably see Hannity all the time, and you see all those. And I'm like, that's actually not that's not how it works. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna give you half off your fare. And I'm like, yeah, man, forget CNN. That fake news stuff, I don't really care. Happily married. My wife has a degree in international studies. And for people who don't know what that means, it is the study of why the world hates America. So she did a lot of studying on that. But we're happy to be in Dearborn. So glad that this event is in Dearborn. It's just a really great place to be. There's some fun facts, stuff that maybe you might not know about Dearborn. It is the world's #1 importer of hair gel. It's a lot. It's a lot of hair gel. Another fact about Dearborn that, a lot of people know this. It's the most well-publicized one. Dearborn has the largest concentration of Yemeni coffee shops in the world. Yeah, of course. You got it. You guys got it. According to the last census, there's, I think, 8 million Yemeni coffee shops in Dearborn. So definitely do enjoy it. So, but of course, we're here for ArabCon. We're here with the ADC. This year's theme, we've been here before, names a truth our community knows very well. Across generations, Arab Americans have faced cycles we recognize: attacks on free speech, attempts to rewrite our history, prejudice at home, and endless wars abroad. And we've seen this before. And each time, we answer with resolve and a commitment to our families and our community. ArabCon exists for that reason. It's a space of solidarity built to connect educators, artists, entrepreneurs, organizers, public servants, and allies. We're here to find common ground, build alliances, and chart a shared path towards justice and truth. But ArabCon is also an unapologetic celebration of Arab American life, from music and film to food, art, business, education, and public service. Our community enriches the culture and civic fabric of the United States every single day. We draw power from community, family, and faith, turning generational adversity into collective empowerment. So thank you for being here, for bringing your voice and your vision. All right, well, we have a full day ahead, conversations that will inform, inspire, and move us forward. With that, it is my honor to begin our program and welcome our first speakers. Iman Ali is an educator and okay. So we will be bringing up our next panel of speakers who will talk about various topics and all of the best conversations. And there's going to be a lot of conversations, as you've noticed through the panel, the pamphlet that you received. So I'd like to introduce one of your favorite comedians.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Dearborn. Welcome to ArabCon. My name is Ahmed Zahar. I'm very happy to be with all of you here today. We are tight on time, so let me introduce our panel. This panel is called Can Law Confront Power? So first, I'd like to introduce the ADC Legal Director, Janine Yunus. Our next panelist is the CARE Legal Director, and is Edward Mitchell. Our next panelist is a civil rights attorney here in Dearborn, Amir Macklid. And finally, another civil rights and immigration attorney joining us from New York City, Amy Greer. All right, well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We'll treat this today like a moot court or something. Everybody, you just got to get your points out quick, like a bunch of lawyers. So, I'm a law professor, and I talk to law students every day, and we know in America there's a lot of distrust in the legal system. Happened before Trump, especially now. And people always ask us lawyers, they ask me, like, why are you guys doing this stuff? You're not going to get what we want. But we do it. Yep. We do it. We go out there, we get in court, we go through all these motions, we try to defend these people, because I guess maybe we do have some sort of, romantic belief in the system of law and the legal system and getting just outcomes. Am I wrong about that, Janine?
I would say it's a mixed bag. I do think that courts get it right a lot of the time, especially the federal judiciary. I wouldn't do the job that I did if I didn't have some faith. Of course, they sometimes also get it wrong. And sometimes you'll get a good decision in the district court that gets overturned on appeal. But for the most part, I do think the judiciary is probably the best branch of government right now in terms of getting good outcomes. It's much better than the legislature or executive. We see this with the deportation cases like Mahmoud Khalil's case, where so far all of the federal courts, to my knowledge, have gotten it right, have recognized that this is an unlawful abuse of power to deport people for exercising their freedom of speech. And I have hope that in the end, these decisions will be upheld in one way or another, and courts will reach the right decisions. But it's definitely a mixed bag, and I've been disappointed many times.
Edward?
Assalamu alaikum. So first, thank you to ADC for hosting us. It's great to be here with all of you. So I think two things can be true at the same time. One is that the law, in many ways, especially laws passed by Congress, are and can be structurally racist, structurally Islamophobic.
They can?
Can be, yes, indeed. And also can give leeway to authoritarian actions when a president is willing to take advantage of those loopholes in the law. And at the same time, the law can and does, especially the Constitution, provide important protections that can protect our right to live out our faith, to advocate for Palestine, to go to work and dress how you want to dress. And so I think the balance that we always have to strike at CARE is being critical of our system and the structural deficiencies in it and trying to change those, while also praising and appreciating and making use of aspects of the law that do protect our rights. And I know we'll talk today about the fight for the right to engage in BDS, student activism on campus. There are laws that have been used to physically attack students, to suppress student rights, to limit the right to boycott, and there have been other laws that have been used to restore the right to boycott and to protect the right of students to be activists on campus. So, a lot depends on the particular law, whether you're talking federal law, state law, what judge you get. But, overall, I think when you compare the opportunity we have in America to use the law to make positive change, I think overall it's still there. It's still very positive. You don't have that in many places around the world. And so as flawed as the system is, I am still optimistic about the law and what we have done with the law and what we still can do with the law to protect our rights, to advocate for all people, including the Palestinian people.
All right. Amir?
Well, Amr, I think in terms of why do we do it as lawyers is what the question was. And so for me, it's the being on the same playing field as the government. Here am I, I'm just a lawyer. At the end of the day, I from the community went, and now I'm on the same playing field as the government of the United States. Mm-hmm. And so that to me is very attractive, because at this point you can argue to the courts, you can use the legal system that we have, and we have an opportunity to be the defenders of the Constitution. And that's what lawyers are at the end of the day. We're the last guard to check and be the balance of the Constitution. And so police officers will be, enforcing, laws that are codified, but we as lawyers are enforcing what the Constitution allows. And that's the distinction that I see in terms of, why do we do it? We've seen how the law is used as both a tool to oppress people, but it's also a shield to liberate individuals as well. And so we're on the side of liberation. We're on the side of resistance. We're on the last line of defense, where we can stand up to a court, to a judge, and then to the public, and defend the rights and the freedoms that we have through the Constitution. And that's really the role of the law that I see that's most critical, and why I, as a lawyer, love it so much, and I'm happy to engage in this practice.
Right. Amy?
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I will just say I am not an immigration attorney. I have been on a very steep learning curve over the last 6 months. I've been primarily a criminal defense attorney who started out as a public defender. But I will just everything everybody here said and add, Noura Erakat in Justice for Some talked about the law and the legal system as a sailboat, where the law, the written codified law, is the sail. We are the wind. And we have an opportunity to determine how laws are made, what laws are passed, how we're pushing against bad law, trying to change and create good law. And we also put pressure on our systems as well to demand more. And we've seen that throughout our history. We were speaking earlier in the 50s and 60s when there was an immense push for Black and brown liberation movements, labor movements, et cetera, that we saw good law being made in part because of these social movements that were pushing everything forward. And so I think we do what we do in part because we're inspired by you and because we want to show up for you, and also work in collaboration with you in moving things in a way that makes us all safer, live in a kinder, more equitable society. And so we're just part of that broader scope. The other thing that I'll just say, and oftentimes lawyers come in to the moment when the harm has already been done. Yeah. And so, we are not typically a prophylactic. We are typically responding and showing up in moments of crisis, in moments of potential crisis. And indeed, the legal system is set up that way. In order to have standing to sue, you have to show that there's an injury of some kind on the civil side. So, all of that is just to say we're here and we're doing important and good work, but it's going to take all of us to make sure that the legal system functions in a way that makes our communities safer, more equitable, and operating in a liberatory framework.
Can I add one quick thing?
Sure.
If you don't want me to. Okay.
Go ahead, quick.
Oh, I just wanted to very quickly add one of the problems I think in the current moment is that especially the Trump administration is just coming down with so many laws and policies so quickly that you actually can't really fight them in real time. And then they'll do it, they'll say this, we're going to deport people for criticizing Charlie Kirk, and then, oh, never mind, we're not doing that. But I think it creates a really chilling environment where people are afraid they just stop speaking on controversial subjects. And so I think that's one of the things we're up against is that, lawsuits work very slowly, and this is all, sort of rapid fire. And so I think what happens ultimately is that people stay away from discussing controversial topics in public.
And that's part of the chilling effect at the end of the day. That's done by the design for this current administration.
Exactly.
So I have this theory that civil rights movements in America historically kind of work like this. You win the people, and then you start winning in courts, and then maybe you win the politicians one day, but it's not really important. And we're sort of getting, if you look at Palestine as a civil rights movement in America, you know, we're getting to this point where we're winning in the courts. And a lot of times in America, when you win in the courts, victories in the law sort of like legitimize the social movement. Say, oh, they were right, you know, and you get to winning in the courts. And they can have huge effects globally. I mean, I don't know if anybody saw this morning, but half the UN General Assembly walked out when Netanyahu started to give his speech this morning.
Yeah, that's great.
And this would have been unthinkable a few years ago. I mean, UN general, like delegations screaming "Free Palestine" while they're walking out of the UN. I mean, it's like, you know, we won. So, what I really want people to hear, because I'm just really sort of proud of all of you, and what I really want people to hear, because we're talking about can law confront power. So, and I'll start with you, Edward. CARE has been at the forefront of dealing with these anti-BDS laws throughout the country. You guys have taken on a lot of that litigation. It's something like upwards of 30 states or something have. Michigan has an anti-BDS law. These laws are written in a way that says the state shouldn't contract with people unless the contract says, you know, you're not going to boycott Israel. A lot of states look at that. You guys have challenged a lot of these laws in a lot of states, and you have widely won in these cases on First Amendment grounds. Can you tell us a little bit of the story of that and how, you know, if that makes you more optimistic about our legal path forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone should know this in this room, but about 9 years ago, under pressure from the ADL and other pro-Israel lobby groups, states started passing laws that they didn't ban your right to boycott Israel, but they said if you want to work for the state or if you want to contract with the state, you have to sign a contract saying you will not boycott Israel. Now, you can boycott anyone else, China, Saudi Arabia, Iran,
America.
Canada, the United States of America. You can boycott your own country. You just can't boycott Israel. And so this is the law that was passed in various different forms in various states. So alhamdulillah, the CARE legal team sued in several states, including Texas and Georgia. And alhamdulillah, we won. So in Texas, there was a, alhamdulillah, in Texas,
Michigan has the same law.
yeah, alhamdulillah. In Texas, there was a special education teacher who was one of the few people in that part of Texas who could do her job. And when it came time to renew her contract, she read the contract and it said, you have to pledge not to boycott Israel. She's a Muslim pro-Palestinian. She said, no, I'm not going to sign it. So they fired her, depriving all these kids of the ability to get the education they needed. So we sued, went to court, and alhamdulillah, a district court judge in Texas ruled in our favor and said this obviously violates the First Amendment. Duh. So we won. She got her job back. Same thing happened in Georgia. In Georgia, Abby Martin, many of you may know her, the journalist, was scheduled to give a speech at Georgia Southern University about Palestine. She was getting an honorarium for doing that. When she came to sign the contract for her honorarium, she saw the BDS clause. She said, I'm not going to do it, so they canceled her speech. We sued, and alhamdulillah, district court ruled, obviously violates First Amendment. We won, alhamdulillah. Here's the catch. So that's the good thing about the law, right? Here's the catch. Here's the bad news. So in both of these states, what do you think the government did in response? Wiped out the law, said, sorry, our bad? No. What they did is they changed the financial threshold that triggers the application of the law. So instead of the law applying to everyone who signs a contract, now it, for example, in Texas, only applies if your contract is, I'm just going to say it hypothetically, I'm not sure what it is, $100,000 or more. So now it doesn't apply to that teacher, it doesn't apply to everyone, likely only applies to people who are getting a really high salary. In Georgia, same thing, increase the threshold. So those laws are still on the books. They still have not been struck down completely because the legislature just danced around. And this shows the importance of not only lawsuits, but also policy work, right? That's why CARE doesn't just have a legal team, we have a policy team. Because at the end of the day, if a legislature is smart, they'll find a way to flout the Constitution. You've got to also change the laws and the policies by lobbying.
It's kind of like what Amy said. Lawyers show up after there's already a problem.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Amir, we, a lot of us who live in, clap if you live in Michigan. A lot of you live in Michigan. And Amir, who, by the way, I get mistaken for you, not on looks, but just on the name.
The name.
And people ask me, are you Amir Maklet? I say, yes. And because A lot of us who live in Michigan might remember the encampments that were going on at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, how the police broke them up and charged these students with crimes. And there's a whole story. I want you to tell the story, but you and a lot of other lawyers represented them pro bono, and you eventually won the case and got the case dismissed. So tell us a little bit of the story about that. And you and I have talked about some of the ridiculousness you had to deal with from the government, and how it actually, didn't come. It was the local prosecutors; they didn't want to do it, and actually came from the highest. Yeah. Please tell us the story.
So obviously there has been a huge encampment movement across the country nationally, and it started with Amy's client Mahmoud in Colombia, and that was one of the first encampments in the United States, and that spread nationally on all the major universities. Encampments were the best approach to really challenge the universities on BDS issues, which were the students wanted to have boycott and divestment, and we're trying to get the universities to at least hear their cries that they didn't want their universities to have any ties to a genocidal state. And so at the U of M campus in Ann Arbor, we had the same encampment there. And this was a group of students and activists that were there for 30 days, encamped in solidarity and a peaceful opportunity and a protest to say to the regions that, look, we want to have a meeting and a discussion with you, our board, to discuss divestment. And that's all their asks really were. It was really nothing more than an opportunity to sit with the Board of Regents, who refused to do so. And so what we saw is a movement from law enforcement, not just in Michigan, but nationally, to try to break up these encampments. They were so triggered that these students were garnering so much attention, internationally even, on this movement. And at the time, that was an excellent approach to really raise awareness and bring it to the forefront of how at the bed of where discourse is made in a university setting, what these conversations were like. And so the university met strategically to try to figure out ways to break up this encampment. And so we uncovered, emails, letters, and communications from within the administration of how they wanted to bust up these encampments. We had conversations with different law enforcement groups, whether it was campus safety or local law enforcement or even county law enforcement. And ultimately, it was decided that it wasn't going to be local police who were going to try to issue trespass tickets. It wasn't going to be a city attorney that would say, okay, these students, interrupted class settings and we can go issue a misdemeanor citation. It wasn't even a county prosecutor who said that these students potentially committed something that's called resisting and opposing a police officer. It was the Attorney General of the state of Michigan, Ms. Dana Nessel, who was elected as the most progressive Attorney General that Michigan has ever elected.
She's a Democrat.
She's a Democrat. And so we're getting attacked from both the left and the right. And this was a clear example of being attacked on the left.
How did they break up the encampment at U of M, if you can tell
it was done in riot gear form. And so it was at 5:30 in the morning. There was actually a church group that was doing their morning prayer, and a large showing of force came from the campus safety police and other enforcement agencies in unison, wearing riot gear, holding batons, and carrying pepper spray. Thank you.
No participation, please. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
So
you're right, but thank you.
What we had is a line formation where they would walk almost military style to get into this encampment, and they were just busting up anything that stood in their way, whether it was a tent, whether it was a table, whether it was a chair, whether it was a student or an activist. They would get thrown down to the floor. And if you stood up against being assaulted by police, you're now resisting. And that's all done on their body cameras. We had hours and hours of footage of how the police came with a strong, excessive use of force to bust up this encampment. And they gave them a warning. I think the time frame was like 15 or 20 minutes to leave. Like they made an announcement before they marched into the encampment. And they waited like 7 minutes before they decided to just go right in and start busting up this encampment. And so at that point, Dana Nessel's office was the one that brought the charges of resisting and opposing police officers, felonies, not even just trespass tickets, felony charges against students and activists.
Felonies, which means, it means you can go to jail for more than a year.
You can go to jail for more than a year. For doing what? For speaking out, for engaging in political speech.
And so how many students were charged?
11 in total. I think 8 were charged with felonies. And so we had a group of volunteer lawyers, many of them from our community here in Dearborn, that stood up immediately in reaction to these, and we banded together and put a strong defense for these students and activists in Ann Arbor. And so by the time we were litigating through this situation, you know, the Attorney General's office was just being inundated with defense motions, defense strategies, cross-examination against the officers, and we discovered that at no time in campus history has an encampment ever been busted up like this. We've never seen in the history of this campus, you know, where people are standing at the diag in protest, being criminally charged to this magnitude. And so it was clear it was just because it was a Palestinian issue. And what we have is a progressive Attorney General who thankfully is term limited, was progressive on every issue except for Palestine. And so we filed a motion to recuse her office. And we were getting an evidentiary hearing on that issue. And right before the court ruled on giving us an evidentiary hearing as to why this particular Attorney General is the one that decided to charge these students, she dismissed the case.
Okay, so this is like really important. So
Yeah.
back in May,
Yeah.
you guys were trying to get her recused because, I mean, we kind of knew that she was getting influence from
the regions,
community
from
groups.
from different community groups. There was even a letter
Right.
from a local Jewish group that sent a letter to the judge to try to influence the judge's decision in that case. And so the judge was furious about outside influence coming through the court. But when I discovered that Dana Nessel had attempted to recuse herself from a different case, there was a case out in Hamtramck that involved some potential election law violations. And she recused her office from that investigation because she didn't want to appear biased or improperly influenced on Arab and Muslim investigations. And she cited our case as one of those reasons as to why she wanted to recuse herself from that investigation.
Okay.
So I discovered that, and I said to myself, well, wait a second. If she's biased on that investigation, and she cites our case as to why she could be perceived as biased, then maybe she's really biased in our case. And so I filed a motion on that issue. The judge looked at it. He said, this has some teeth to it. This has some merit. Why does she feel she's biased? We need to have an evidentiary hearing. And so the moment the court said we're going to have an evidentiary hearing, which is to have testimony as to why this is, was to open up some discovery on this issue, she dismissed the case. She dropped it.
Yeah.
And so
this is like TV dramatic stuff. Like you guys were in court, you're about to have this evidentiary hearing, then you go back to chambers,
Yeah.
and the Attorney General says, "Oh, it's okay. We don't want to have an evidentiary hearing. We give up."
We give up. And they
So
came out.
we give up means like we should have never charged these kids.
Exactly.
Right.
No. I mean, from the onset, we knew this was a political prosecution. I mean, it was clear in terms of how everything was brought forth. And we didn't see an example of criminal prosecutions at this magnitude in different campuses across the country.
Yeah.
We saw really serious issues in terms of immigration and people that are non-citizens, and Amy will speak as to those, and that happened from encampments. But we never saw, potential prison sentences to students. And mind you, a lot of these students are not Arab. Actually, none of them.
Yeah.
Not a single charged student or activist was an Arab American. Some were Jewish Americans. Only maybe one was a Muslim American. And so that shows the strength that we have as a cohesive group of and diverse group of individuals that are all standing together on this particular issue.
And the lawyers that came forward were also not all Arab. I mean,
Not
there were
all
some-
Arab. Different. Some were Jewish. Some were white. Some were Muslim.
Yeah,
Some were.
right.
Only one was Palestinian. My buddy Jamil.
Yeah. Yeah, I always said it must really stink to be the other side. I mean, you come into our spaces and it's like everybody, and the other side, whatever. So, Amy, you're part of a legal team that represents a guy that some people know from social media called Mahmoud Khalil.
Mm-hmm.
And they're clapping for you.
I know, I'm clapping for Mahmoud.
Yeah, they're clapping for you. So, and you said a few minutes ago that you're not an immigration lawyer. You are now.
Yeah.
And
I'm something.
and if you could, so from what I know as just someone who teaches the law, is that so people understand, so people don't get disillusioned. It seems like Mahmoud's gone through a few losses because in the immigration court it's really administrative, and and he's gonna get the order of deportation. We all kind of knew that. That's all administrative stuff, and he has to exhaust. The immigration courts are not really courts. They're sort of a branch of the Department of Justice, and the judges aren't really judges. They are employees of the appointed by the Department of Justice. They're not federal judges for real. And so, nothing against immigration judges in case they're watching me, but they're not like appointed judges from Article 3 judges. And so, but you have to exhaust all this administrative stuff in the immigration courts, and you're not really allowed to bring up the constitutional challenges to his deportation. You have to wait for all that to happen, and that looks like it's kind of happening. You're kind of simultaneously doing that.
Yep.
And then you can, so where are we?
Yep.
And are you optimistic? You know, we're all hoping that once we can make these First Amendment arguments fully in court, that we'll win. Are you optimistic? Do you expect the government to take this to Supreme Court and lose? I mean, what do you think's going on? And are you optimistic about the future of this case?
Sure. So I'm going to touch on that, but I also think context is important, but I'll answer your question first.
Yes.
So where we are now is Mahmoud is fighting on two fronts at the moment. The immigration case, as you just mentioned, we will be appealing up to the Board of Immigration Appeals, and that is also another administrative body that is, employed by the Attorney General of the United States. And so, we anticipate more of the same there. And then it'll go up to the Fifth Circuit because Mahmoud's immigration case is emanating out of Louisiana, where they abducted him and caged him for 104 days. And so by the time it gets to the Fifth Circuit, they're not necessarily going to get into some of the constitutional stuff. They rely on the factual record that comes up from the lower process through the Immigration Court and the Board of Immigration Appeals. And so that is also why our team acted very quickly, a small team of us acted very quickly on March 8th into March 9th after Mahmoud was abducted to file what's called a habeas corpus petition in the Southern District of New York at 4:40 a.m. on March 9th. Habeas corpus means like of the body, and it challenges the constitutionality of the detention of someone, right? So that's what that means. When you hear habeas, that's what's happening.
And it tells the government they have to produce this person in court.
Right, and that they have to explain themselves,
Yeah.
right? So, that got transferred for all kinds of procedural things we don't need to get in here to the District of New Jersey, which is where we're fighting now. The court in the District of New Jersey has held that the Rubio determination, that letter that was made public, that Marco Rubio stated that Mahmoud was a threat to, that he had reason to believe that Mahmoud was a threat to American foreign policy because he holds anti-Semitic beliefs and engaged in anti-Semitic activism and protest. False, by the way, in case that just needs to be said, but that's what the Rubio determination said. It had nothing else attached to it. No evidence, no nothing. That's it.
Didn't say he lied on his application.
No. So that came later.
Came later, right.
Yeah. So with the Rubio determination, the district court determined that is likely to be unconstitutionally vague. And what he meant by that is, if you can deport somebody because of this very loose, there is no definition of anti-Semitism, no definition of foreign policy, no explanation of the foreign policy that was impacted, how can any of us know when we're on the wrong side of the, that we're running astray of the law? So that's what vagueness means, right? How can any of us know what the parameters are, right? How to be lawful? How can you know how to be lawful if you don't know what the law says? So the court held that. But after the Rubio determination, and the government said in an amazing trial, American university professors, American Association of University Professors versus Rubio out of the District of Massachusetts, I encourage you to look for media about it because some amazing things came out in that trial, is that the government knew that this foreign policy ground might get overturned because it's fishy. So they then determined that in order to get this guy out of here, they needed to come up with something else. And so they came up with a pretextual, which means sort of an excuse, a Trojan horse, however you want to say it, to say that Mahmoud misrepresented on his lawful permanent residency application. And so what happened recently is that case has, that allegation, once the court said that the foreign policy ground was unconstitutional, the immigration court steamrolled ahead on the second ground and never held a hearing. Mahmoud was never cross-examined. No evidence was ever presented of this alleged misrepresentation. At court where we could poke holes in it, we could do all the amazing things that Amir was doing. Like, we didn't have that opportunity, and the judge found him removable or deportable on that second charge now. We expected this. It happened a little faster than we expected, I would say, but we knew this was coming. So what we're arguing in the District of New Jersey then is all of this, the foreign policy ground from the Rubio determination and this misrepresentation allegation, all of this is in retaliation for Mahmoud's speech and advocacy for Palestinian rights, dignity, liberation. And so what I think is really critical here to build a little bit on what Amir was just saying, and I think Mahmoud would want me to speak this. For those of you who saw the encampments last night, you got some sense. But here's the thing. As you all likely know, Colombia became ground zero for government repression of speech on Palestine. So what started happening very early on was third-party private actors were doing what's called doxing of students. They were publishing their personal information online, publishing their photographs online. There were trucks going around campus with students' faces saying America's #1 anti-Semite, rolling around campus, giving information, stating their names. Websites were going up. I'm not going to give these websites airspace today, but I will say that they've been collecting names and publishing and defaming students left and right. Students were under immense scrutiny. But then the Committee on Education and Workforce got involved. They started hauling in university presidents. They started demanding that the universities turn over student records, private student disciplinary records. They demanded that they be unredacted. Some schools complied with requirements under the law. Some schools did not. But those records were turned over to Congress on October 31st, 2024. The House Committee on Workforce and Education put out this incredible report, report that named students, named faculty, called them pro-terror, called them anti-Semites, called them pro-jihad, called them pro-Hamas, based on nothing, on no evidence, based on their advocacy for Palestinian liberation and Palestinian human rights, or in criticism of Israeli actions in Palestine. So that happened. And then after the inauguration occurred, the federal agencies jumped in. And the federal agencies started sending letters to Colombia, demanding information, demanding to know what they're going to do to combat anti-Semitism on campus, virulent anti-Semitism on Columbia campus. And so all of this pressure is roiling. And amidst all of that, Mahmoud's name started getting spoken out of the mouths of people who should never speak his name on the internet, connecting him, tagging Marco Rubio, tagging ICE, tagging Kristi Noem, tagging DHS. And so all of this was roiling up to the moment of March 8th with the video that many of you have likely seen, where Mahmoud was stolen from his 8-month pregnant wife. I was on the phone that night, sorry, Dr. Noor Abdullah is like one of my favorite people on the entire planet, and what she must have been going through that night, I could hear in her voice such strength and such fear simultaneously. So all of these forces and pressures were building to that night. And what I'm going to close on is that is why Mahmoud and a number of incredibly brave Columbia students have come together to sue Columbia, the Committee on Education and Workforce, and the federal agencies that make up the Anti-Semitism Task Force to defend their First Amendment rights, since Columbia didn't defend them. Yes. And we are doing that. I am doing that with my firm, Draytell & Lewis. We're doing it alongside Edward's amazing organization, Care National, Care New York, and some amazing attorneys. We also have a wonderful group from CUNY Civil Rights Clinic, so we have some wonderful students on board who are helping us. And so this is where law can be affirmative, where we can say, no, we won't allow our government to suppress and chill speech on Palestinian rights and dignity, especially in the face of a 2-year genocide. And these students are so brave. They are so brave. So all of this is roiling together. It's still roiling. We're still hearing the government enact incredible cruelty on families, and students. So anyway, that's Mahmoud's story.
So,
In sum, I mean, there's a lot more to say about Mahmoud, but.
but just so that people don't freak out, we all saw this news a couple days ago where the judge ordered him deported to
For the
Syria
second
or
time.
Algeria. It's such a Palestinian thing, like we're deporting you to this place or this place. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
We don't know where we're deporting you, but we're deporting you to Syria or Algeria. But that's not. It's not. He's
Oh,
protected from that. That's
yes,
not happening
I'll just
right
say
now.
really quick, there
just
is
so
a-
just to put everybody at a little bit of ease.
He's here, and
Well, he's
yes,
here, yeah.
with every Palestinian, I always have to ask, where's
Sorry,
your passport from? Because it could be
Yeah.
anywhere. But so Mahmoud was deported for a second time, allegedly, last week. Obviously, many of you have already seen him. He's still here. There's a federal district court order in place that says until that habeas proceeding has concluded and the judge determines otherwise, he may not be removed from the country. So that was put in place on the morning after we filed that habeas petition.
Yeah, and to steal a line from a former ADC president, Albert Mukhaiber, who used to always welcome these people, I would like to welcome our uninvited guests from the FBI and CIA who are here with us tonight, and let them know that we will protect Mahmoud, and we will protect the students from U of M, and we will protect people who are standing up to talk about Palestine, and we will protect them as much as we can here, and if we got to keep them in Dearborn, we will. But Janine, as the legal director of ADC, what role does ADC play in either supporting these efforts or taking on more impact litigation themselves, and how can the community help make that happen?
Sure. So I just started a few weeks ago, so I don't have.
Tell us everything, Janine.
But my plan is, I'm a First Amendment lawyer, so my plan is really to take on a lot of these issues from a First Amendment angle. I can tell I have one case that's interesting and I think fits into what we've been talking about on the defense side. So the client's name is Janine Ali, and she is a 73-year-old grandmother of 11. She was at a Code Pink protest in front of the Dirksen Senate building. And there was a Beitar counter-protest, and I know people are probably familiar with the Beitar, the Jewish supremacist group who embraces terrorism to fulfill their aims and silence pro-Palestine activism. So this woman, Kimara Sumral, who's sort of a known staple at these events and has a record of lots of petty offenses. She hit my friend Max Blumenthal in the face with an Israeli flag once. Not the most well-behaved woman on the planet. But so she claims that Janine pulled her Israeli flag cape and choked her briefly. She pressed criminal charges because she raised I think the cops didn't really want to do anything, but she raised hell. So that ultimately this went to criminal trial. Janine was acquitted. The judge found that she was credible. Ms. Sumral, the Beitar woman, was not credible, and the police witness appeared also not to be credible. However, Ms. Sumral filed a civil federal case drowning Ms. Ali, who doesn't have a lot of means, in legal debt. And shockingly, the judge, I was just shocked, the judge granted a preliminary injunction in favor of Ms. Sumral, making a number of erroneous legal findings that are probably boring for everybody. She sued under a statute, 1981, which is supposed to be about contracts and requires some state action and stuff like that. But in the judge's findings were saying basically that it was an act of racial discrimination that was required under the statute because the Israeli flag is a symbol of Jewish identity, and so by pulling on the Israeli flag, which she didn't anyway, but let's assume she did, that was anti-Semitic discrimination. So the judge's decision has really problematic impacts in terms of conflating, an act of animosity towards Israel with anti-Semitism. So we're working, we have many arguments about why this preliminary injunction was wrong and why the case should be dismissed, but we're, really harping on the fact that this is a big First Amendment problem with major implications if the judge's ruling stands. So hopefully it will be overturned on appeal, but I do have some hope and belief that it will. But that's an example of a federal district judge who is just stunningly ignorant, I guess.
Well, we're getting the need to move on sign. So what I just want to say as we wrap up is that thanks for letting me be with you all. I don't really practice law, but thanks for letting me be with all of you. I just studied it. My mom tells people I'm a lawyer. But I just want to say, and I think I've been working in the Arab American community since I was 5 years old, and I've been at every ADC convention since the 90s. And I think I speak for everyone in our community when I say to all of you, thank you. And we are proud of you. And we will do everything we can to help keep supporting the work that all of you are doing. So one more time, a big hand for Edward Mitchell from CARE, Amir Macklid from right here in Dearborn, Amy Greer, immigration lawyer.
You're going to get me in trouble.
Sorry, Amy Greer, and of course, ADC Legal Director Janine Yunus. Are we asking people to stay for the next panel? Can I get an answer? Okay, stay where you are until told to go otherwise. But thank you very much. Continue to enjoy ArabCon, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.